whenever it's the regular meeting time. Then, okay?
All right, thanks.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. Well, I would like to call the meeting of the Finance Committee of the Board of Education of Edwardsville School District to order. Carrie, will you please call the roll?
Olson.
Present.
McDowell. Delariva.
Here. I'd like to, we have the minutes for the May 11th, 2020 Finance Committee meeting in front of us, and I would like to move to approve the minutes of the Finance Committee meetings held on May 11th, 2020. Was there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Carrie, will you please call the roll?
Delariva.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
McDowell.
Yes.
Motion approved. Tonight, really, basically on the agenda is the approval to adopt the 2019-2020 amended budget. We spoke at length about it last month, but Dave is here and he will give us just a brief overview.
Thank you, Terry. The amended budget that's being presented tonight is almost identical to the one that we discussed in May. There's nothing really that's changed with the school closures and all that. Where we expected to end up and where we projected in May is pretty much the same right now. And just to summarize, we are obviously projecting to add another $700,000 towards from cash within the year at $1.4 million. In the ed fund, we have about a $3 million revenue over expense surplus this year, which would cause our balance to get out of the negative in about $2.5 million. So as we discussed in May, basically the revenue that we lost with the closure between food service, kids zone, preschool academy, summer zone, all those kind of revenue sources, the lost revenue is basically being offset, or the reduced expenditures for some of those areas basically has offset that. So when you look at the actual end of year reports, I left the budgets the way they were so that if we could easily discern the areas that were impacted by the COVID-19 closure, but the revenue and expenses basically offset. So we're still going to project the end of the year at $2.5 million. The other fund, other two, the O&M fund, I have projecting to go down about $500,000, which is what we had talked about in May. There is a pretty good chance that that budget or that fund balance will be higher than that. Basically, in utilities, we're running ahead of budget right now. So I think that number will be a little higher. And then on transportation, as we discussed, we are projecting $800,000. I think at the end of the year, we'll probably be closer to $1 million with some of the costs that we have saved on fuel costs, field trips, and things like that. So those items haven't changed. We did get our third quarter categorical payments on Friday. So we won't have to do any interfund borrowing to the transportation fund or anything like that. With that payment, we're able to pay for a student what we owe them in May. So other than that, everything is pretty much what we discussed at May's meeting. And finance committee to approve it and to forward it to the board. But everything is pretty much the same.
I move that the Finance Committee approves, approves and forwards the amended budget for the 2019-2020 school year to be voted on by the full board. Carrie, will you please call the roll?
Delariva,
Yes.
McDowell,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Is there any further discussion? Any questions for Mr. Courtney? I have actually a couple of questions. We talked about possibly providing students with technology on a one-to-one basis for the high school. Have we obtained estimates for that, and do we have an idea of how that's going to fit in to our financial demands for the next year?
Yeah, so it's about 1.1 million, give or take, 1.2.
Okay.
Our budget right now in tech for devices are for, I'll call it all of the tech enhancements, I'll say, that we've been trying to achieve. So the budget right now is about 2.1. That budget this year includes a one-time payment from Glen Carbon for the TIF closure of Glen Carbon. So if you take that out, the budget's about 1.3 to 1.4 million in expense. So the things that we've been doing this year, we've spent almost $2 million in it, and it's a lot of the infrastructure costs. What we have finished infrastructure-wise is the high school. We've got the infrastructure in place for the middle school. We have to do the drops still in the middle school to get that in the classrooms, the wiring and all that infrastructure is done. All that's been paid for out of this year's budget. So going into next year, you have about a $1.3, $1.4 million budget for tech devices, okay? Now, does that mean if we made the decision to do infrastructure all the way down to the elementary level, would that have to come out of there? Yeah. So the answer is yes. It's just that there may be some other things later on if we decided that we wanted to have Wi-Fi at every elementary all the way down to first grade. Then that would have to be finagled into the budget, either through some other transfers or other sources. But there's about a 1.3 to 1.4 million dollar budget that's in there right now, static for tech, equipment, devices, things like that. Now, that being said, we are still waiting on a payment from the city of Edwardsville for TIF closure number 3, which we still haven't received today.
Okay.
So if that money was in there, that would provide, I would call it more of a one-time source to finish other infrastructure needs that we may want if we want to go to intermediate levels and things like that for Wi-Fi and things like that. So that money, at least from the hard wiring and infrastructure needs, you could use, or you could use it to offset some things. But the budget right now is set about 1.3.
Now, we had initially, so last year we did, and we just finished the upgrades to Lincoln and Liberty. And then was it in the plan to do the grade schools this year? Not yet. Okay.
It was in the plan this year to do the middle schools, which we did. This year.
You did
we're
ahead of
finishing out.
schedule.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing that. We have talked about if we want at some point, but there would just be infrastructure costs for them as well.
Expensive.
Especially in some of the older schools, Columbus and some of them, especially Columbus, for intermediate, probably Woodland too. That would be possible.
So Dave, prematurely, how many devices do you think the school would need to purchase for each student to be one-to-one?
You're looking at,
Or, well, I mean, what are your estimates?
devices in the high school? You're looking at 1.1 to 1.2 million. So if you extrapolate down the middle school, 1,800, you're looking at probably 700, 800,000, give or take. So that's the recurring cost then you have to kind of build in. So even if you plan, from what I look at it from a budget, you can look at it different ways too. Obviously, you have the cost up front. You're basically, you got 3 years probably where that device is viable.
Mm-hmm.
So you're basically setting aside $400,000 for high school devices every year now for the next 2-3 years. Then the cycle would start. When you add the middle school in, then you're setting aside another 250, 300,000, 250 maybe for devices. So it's just the cycle, you know.
Some districts, and really that's one reason why you probably don't want to get devices for everybody at the same time. Because you want to have a year, if you want to replace the high school 1 year, then the middle school 1 year.
So you have to cycle
Then true. And you really don't want a device necessarily in every student's hand from kindergarten up.
Right.
Very few districts have them below third, second, some at second grade, but you have things available, but as far as having a one-to-one, that's not typical when you get into those very low grade levels. It's just not.
But my question was more or less, where the estimates, I know, so we don't know, but how many kids are we going to have to provide a one-to-one or a device to, in the high school?
Yeah, the plan right now is to give to all of them.
Yeah.
So was there any consideration for parents using some of the fund, the book fee fund or anything like that, or increasing the book fund in order to
We've talked about it, but
help with those expenses?
we've talked about it. But I think that Dave and I are at the point where we're not sure we're going to recommend that. Next month will be the month that we'll do that.
Okay.
We could potentially do that, but we could also wait. We do have some one-time money coming in now with the TIF money. And there's also some money coming from a grant called the CARES grant, which has to do with it.
Right.
So that's a one-time of about $400,000. So that's for remote learning. It's supposed to be for remote learning, but also for things like to prepare you, cleaning supplies, things that you need for to deal with the pandemic continuing into the fall. So we have some one-time funds that will be there this year.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So the tech devices for the high school would come out of the district budget. The devices we've talked about for the teachers are coming from the CARES fund. So,
Okay. All right.
so the
that's good
550
news.
525 devices for the teachers wouldn't be in the district budget. It's going to be paid out of this CARES fund right now. And then we're going to probably move some other stuff around for some grants. So those devices will be covered differently than the high school devices.
So if a parent, for example, like myself, we have a laptop that our son has. Would you want to check one out to him then, or
Yeah.
Well, the plan now is to give them to everybody.
There's something about having a uniform device where everyone has the same device, teachers are comfortable with it. Because otherwise you're going to have people that come and say, my phone's a device, and I want you to use my phone. Go ahead.
One of the configuration things to keep in mind is when we create an image for a laptop with high school students, we basically have got a model configured where whether it be Phantom software or John Meisen's computer class or the business class to use whatever application, we have that image that we can put on that device. When we hand that student that device that we would provide them, they would log in, authenticated domain, and they would have everything they need for all the configuration for any course at the high school. If students would walk with a personal device, be able to restage that and put all those applications on there, literally would take longer than what we do as far as providing them. And then we have to worry about the compatibility of drivers and configuration of what they walked in with, actually supporting everything that we're working on right now. So we've been working since March to make sure Windows 10 and Office 2015 work with all the applications we can put on there for that image, if you will, for that high school device. So from a troubleshooting standpoint, as Dr. Henderson said, the other part of it is if we walk in and all the kids have, let's say it's a 3300 series Dell laptop, we know the configuration, if something's broken on it, very easily we can swap out parts or give them a different laptop and re-image, and it minimizes the downtime as well from the Ford issue, or if it's a budget screen and stuff like that. We anticipate buying about 125 laptops extra to start with. We don't know really what the student's going to be, but that's in consideration of what we're looking at for that configuration, and we're at about $425 for a Windows laptop, what we're looking at right now. And the teacher laptop, if you mentioned it, around $950 with the 10 devices on there is what we're at right now, those devices. So if anybody else got any questions, I can help clarify.
And the very last point I'll make is that when we give a device, then we also have more control about what they can get to and what they can't get to. And so that gives us that freedom as well. So it's always good if you can have it and you can do it to have. Listen, just.
And then with the school district expanding Schoology to all grades, that's probably part of next year's budget as well, right? Okay. All right. The reason why I was asking is because we've been talking a lot about technology and our funding of technology and how that's looking in the financial picture for us concerns me, because the state of Illinois, the state budget just said that they were passing full funding for local schools, which means we're getting the same. Actually, could you explain what that means, Dave?
Well, right now for the state, it's flat funding next year, basically.
So we're not seeing an increase in
So
funding.
evidence-based funding will be flat. The categoricals that we get paid, I'm gonna make, the transportation is probably gonna be prorated more, because if the funding's flat, most people's costs are going up. So more costs, flat funding, you're gonna be prorated higher. Same thing with out-of-district tuition costs and the one special ed working needs. Those numbers are probably be prorated higher this coming year than they were the past year.
And when you say prorated, you mean
We'll get less.
we will get less money.
Yeah,
That's our guess. We don't know that for sure.
we don't know for sure.
Right, but
I think transportation
purposes
is
of
probably
explaining.
pretty sure that it's right. Now, how much? Who knows? Could go from 98 to 97 or 98 to 90 or.
well, are you thinking,
It's
For the last
prorated right
quarter?
now. I mean, the
For the-
regular and special ed transportation are prorated, I think, at 91%, I think. Special ed may be 91 now, regular maybe 95, 6. I mean, but it's being prorated already. Let's just say that. So,
okay.
I do have a question, just out of curiosity, with the CARES fund. Could that theoretically be used for teacher PD this summer, or to help with them to train in a remote capacity if it were to need to happen?
the answer, Katie, is yes. What we're fighting with right now is we have an allocation of $517,000. The computer devices are about $460,000. There is a parochial component that the parochial schools get access to that we don't know what that number is going to be yet. But in theory, yes, you can do that. There is probably something, we are going to probably move some of the teacher devices. I was looking at it this afternoon. Probably going to chart some of them to our IDA grant, because we have a large carryover with special ed funding right now in the IDA. So I'm probably going to pull those off. So if we needed to do something and charge it to there, we could.
To answer one of the questions on yours, Katie, we've got a plan to provide PD though this summer, even though it's not coming out of the CARES grant. We've got our tech coaches, we've okayed them to have some summer work, because they're going to be providing a lot of our PD as well. So it won't come out of the CARES money, but we definitely have a plan for remote learning training for the teachers.
I was just curious because I know some of our CARES funding at higher ed is going towards PD. I didn't know if it was the same at K-12.
It could be used for that.
So because we're purchasing over 500 devices,
Yeah.
it's
It doesn't
understood that
matter.
we want the training.
You're going to spend it one
You want
place or
it.
the other.
Yeah,
Right.
So it doesn't,
So,
it doesn't matter. No.
Yeah.
will it be? Yeah, it probably will. We could move some of it probably because, you know, we have 75, especially teachers. I mean, we could probably charge 75, 100,000 of that 469 to 98 grand. So you'd have like 100,000 that you could use for. We could charge professional development if we want to.
All right, I just, I'm asking because we're seeing that flat funding and potential proration from the state of Illinois. So now we're getting into what we've experienced in the past, which is some difficulties and financial difficulties, and which is why we passed the referendum in the first place, is to come kind of help us through those tough financial times. And I just, I'm concerned of what the financial picture is for the next year or two.
Yeah.
I know you are.
I wouldn't argue your sentiment. I think we'll have a much better picture 12 months from now
Okay.
as to what the long-term funding of the state and, the economy and the housing market and all that stuff 12 months from now is today.
Mm-hmm. But, I still see, our community still support education with their tax dollars in full force. So, like I said, I appreciate your answering those questions. Yeah. Is there any more questions or any further business?
I'd just like to make a comment that if, whenever the final decision, if it hasn't been made already, once it's made as far as the technology that the teachers are going to be getting and also the high school students, I'd just be curious to get the specs on them and things like that. I know Bill was talking about, having a certain standard to them. So it'd be just helpful to know, what they consist of, unit prices and things like that, just so we have a frame of reference.
We'll get you that.
That's fine.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I think I have a quick, easy one. We're still on track to pay down the debt June 30, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, I have a quick question. Will there be an insurance cost tacked on for the kids getting the computers, the devices, or?
We're debating on that insurance cost. We're not 100% sure yet. We're costing it out, and it could be that we offer parents the ability to purchase it, or it could be that we purchase it. We're kind of we're not 100% sure on the answer to that yet.
Okay. And will the maintenance upkeep for the computers, is that tacked in too?
Well, for the most part, we'll buy a maintenance plan for the computer. So we'll try to handle the little problems within our own house.
Okay.
And the major things we'll send off, but that's why we have a few extra devices as well. But yes, we're accounting for the fact that some of them will break or some of them will be broken. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
What company, just real quick, what company do we make these bulk purchases from in general? Just
The computers are Dell.
do you go straight through Dell or do you go through like a?
We go straight to Dell.
Okay.
Like on the teacher ones, they're Dell.
Okay.
We'll try at the next meeting we'll get you some more specs on the devices, the different.
Yeah, I have the specs for the teacher ones already. We're going through those right now, so I can send
Yeah. Just
They've
numbers.
done a lot of research. The teachers have been in playing with them, and the teachers have a lot of input, the tech coaches on the device. So
Cool.
That's good to hear.
And the teachers is different though, machines or
Yes.
computers than what
It'll
the
be
students.
It's much
get,
more
right? Okay.
robust, I'll say.
Yeah.
It's much more.
Teacher, the 2-in-1 device with the camera.
Camera.
Thanks for giving them the ability to walk around using the tab mode. We'll be able to connect to the projector when we finish that cabling, that configuration. So application will allow them to annotate on a screen with a, they'll be able to use that, walk around the classroom, or if they choose to use it as a laptop, they can use it both ways. So it's a full-fledged 2-in-1, good process, good memory, good battery life. We anticipate that being basically be able to use all day long for a teacher. The thing we talked about teachers about the weight and the size as far as how big is too big, how heavy is too big, things like that. And then the It's a Windows device, so all their applications that exist there remotely on it. So, we also looked at some other manufacturers and found that most of them were more expensive. We looked at HP and Lenovo. Dell's been a long-time vendor, and they really stepped up and gave us really good prices on this device. So we're pretty pleased with the prices. They were really a couple $100 less than either Lenovo or HP. So,
And how many are you buying? Excellent. Anything else? Is there a motion on the floor to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Okay, so we'll close this meeting and then we'll get into the executive session meeting as quickly as we can. All right, thank you.